Hello, I'm Addison, and today I'm interviewing my neighbor, Wanda Sims.
Hello.
What is your full name?
My name is Wanda Gail Shoemaker Sims.
What year were you born and how old are you?
I was born in 1949. I am 72 years old.
What world events were going on in the time you were born?
It was very interesting. It was the end of World War II. That was over. My dad had been a sailor and he had come home from World War II. So even though it had been over for a little while, that was still very much in the air.
Right.
And so it was not a lot of political kinds of things were going on then because we didn't have TV.
Right.
And we didn't really even have radio like we have today. That came along. We'll talk about that before.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest thing going on. It was getting over that and getting everybody back into their normal lives.
Right. Okay. Describe your home life and your relationship with your parents and discipline.
Okay. It could be the best childhood ever. My mom and dad, when they got married, they moved in with my mother's mother, my grandmother. So it was the three of us.
Okay.
And my dad was a bricklayer. My mom worked in a factory. And my granny kind of stayed home and was there for us. My sister is 8 years younger than me.
Okay.
And so I didn't like her when she came along. She messed up my little world. But as far as chores went, we kind of did everything. I did the boy things and the girl things. I cut grass. I painted, anything like that. I didn't do as many house chores, maybe because my granny did that.
Right.
But we just did, all the chores around is what we did.
Okay. Did you go to school and what was school like?
I did. I went to Stringer Attendance Center, which was just up the hill from my house. My little town, Stringer, Mississippi, was very, very small. We had a railroad track and a little grocery store and a post office, and that was about it. So I walked to school, and it was the same building for 12 years. My mom had been to school in that building, as had my daddy. It had been there for a long time. And I'm sorry, where did I go to school, and was it good?
Yeah,
it was very, very good. I actually was valedictorian of my class. We only had, I think, 28 people in the class. So same place, went to school with the same kids for 12 years, and it was very good.
That's good. What was your first job and how old were you? What were the wages compared to?
This is an interesting one. I thought about this for a while. My very first job, the first thing I did to work and get money, was something called the City Directory. Laurel, Mississippi was just 10 miles down the road, and it was a bigger little city. So they always, every year, did a city directory, which was basically almost like a phone book. It had everybody listed, their address, what they did, their job, and things like that. So every year they had to update it. So they brought people in, and my job was to go to a certain section of town, walk down the street, go knock on every door and say, I am Wanda Shoemaker, and I'm here with the city directory, and would you please answer these questions for me?
Wow.
And I was paid something like $1.50 an hour.
Oh.
It became quickly apparent that this was not safe for a young. I was probably 18 at the time. This was not safe, and my father said, you are not going to do that anymore.
Right.
So that was my first job.
Okay. Does that job correspond to the job that you have now?
It did not.
Okay.
No.
What are some differences between the grocery prices then and now?
Oh, it is amazingly different. We would go to our little local grocery store. We didn't have the big stores, like Kroger and Ingles and things like that. We'd go to the butcher for the meat, and it was great, but it was very, very cheap. We would probably buy, at our local little grocery store is where, it was just a convenience store basically. They had a little bit of everything in there. That's where we bought everything else. And we probably spent $20 a week on groceries.
Wow.
They were very cheap and very good. We also grew a lot of our food too.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to buy a lot of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What was the transportation like, and is it any different now?
It's not a lot different. We had our little old car, a Ford, and Daddy always had his pickup truck because he had to have the truck for work.
Right.
And, you know, it was just always, almost every family had that same setup. They had the family car and the pickup truck. And, you know, they weren't as fast and as souped up as cars are today, but that was, oh, and there were no automatic transmissions, everything. I'm very good at shifting because we had to be, or else we couldn't drive.
What were the major political issues going on when you were growing up?
You know, I thought a lot about that. And there, again, we didn't have the social media that we have today. We didn't have TV. We had a little radio that we get one little station. So we didn't have a lot of things going on. You know, people did what they thought was the right thing to do. Probably segregation was the biggest thing, and it wasn't even viewed as an issue. It's just that's what it was. So I think politically then, probably the biggest thing was around the Korean War was potentially brewing. Vietnam was potentially brewing. So it was around those kind of conflicts, but they weren't in our country. It was, you know, things that we would get involved with.
Right. Do you still have any contact with your best friends from when you were younger?
Do you know, I do on occasion. My very best friend, Robbie Price, her dad owned a little grocery store. Mm-hmm. She and I connected on Facebook, and, you know, we talk a little bit that way. But you know what we've done is promised each other that later this spring, we're going to get together. I've not seen her in probably 30 years, but it's... she was just my best buddy ever. I lived just beside her grandmother, and her house was just past the railroad track. So, yeah. Cool. So, and I still, on occasion, again, because of Facebook, I will hear, you know, something from my friends. There was an interesting thing. There's an application called Classmates, and I joined that a long time ago. And on occasion, they would say, your class of 1967, which is when I graduated, there are comments there. So I looked at it today, and I had 5 people who had remembered me. And they asked, how was she? And 4 of the people said, I was sweet, and 1 said, I was well dressed.
I think that's good too. Yeah.
I had a good recommendation.
Yes, I think that is good. How did you meet your spouse?
I have been divorced, and that's Tom. I met Van, my first husband, just because of a friend. He did not go to the same school that I went to. He went to the school 8 miles up the road, and I met him, and we got to know each other.
Okay.
So, and then Tom, I actually met when I was working at a hospital in Mississippi, and he came into our hospital to implement a computer system.
Oh, cool.
I met him that way. He's from Colorado.
What was healthcare like growing up?
Do you know, healthcare was not complicated, but very good. We didn't have insurance. That was not, you know, something that we did. I think it probably existed, but not to the degree it does today. We had a doctor in our little town, Dr. Stringer, who delivered me. Did not deliver my sister, but delivered me. He lived right up the road. I would walk up the road and go see him when we needed to. And I distinctly remember when my grandmother was ill and she passed away, her doctor came and did a house call. So that's the way, it was a more personal, connected thing.
Right. Who is the first president that you remember, and what is significant about their term?
I remember Eisenhower.
Oh.
He was a Republican, and I don't remember him really, really, really well. So probably the one I remember more is the one after him, who was JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And he was a more progressive, younger president who kind of introduced some new ideas. But the thing I will never forget, I was in the 8th grade. I was sitting in my classroom, and there were the 28 of us in our class, and our principal knocked on the door, and our teacher opened the door, and he whispered something, and she just almost panicked, and she turned around and she said, President Kennedy has been assassinated. I will never forget that day.
No, that's crazy.
He tried very hard to do good things for the country.
Yes, that's good. What wars do you remember happening, if there were any?
I remember Vietnam, and just because the time when that was going on, I was so young I didn't really understand it. I just knew that a lot of the people that I knew were being drafted.
Right.
And I had two actually, friends that I had known or knew in high school who were killed there. So that one was very, very, very raw. You know, it affected all of us because we saw our friends go, and some of them did not come back.
What is different about the culture today?
I think a couple of things. Number one, our women, our status in this world, because when I grew up, you know, Daddy knows best.
Right.
It was that way. Women were expected to stay home and raise their children. There were some positions like a nurse and a teacher, you know, those were okay for women to have,
Right.
but it was very much a male culture. And women were respected. They were not disrespected. I'm sure some were, but most were not. It was just, we knew our place.
Right.
You know, we knew our place. And that obviously has changed over the years. So I think that's probably the biggest difference.
Who was famous, and like what was the music
Oh boy.
like for you guys?
Elvis.
Okay.
Elvis was it. He was from Mississippi, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that, interesting, because that kind of music, you know, Elvis, Conway Twitty, a lot of country music, and then there was also the big band things, Frank Sinatra and that kind of thing. But that was almost like it was foreign stuff for us.
Right.
You know, it was Elvis all the way.
Okay. What did a fun night out with your friends look like?
Do you know what? We didn't have fun night outs very much. We just didn't do that. You know, we were together all during the day. Occasionally we'd go to their house for dinner or something like that. But we didn't have parties and nights out. We just didn't do it. You know, and it's not that we thought we were being, you know, not allowed to do anything. You know, we would go to a movie. There were movies in Laurel, Mississippi, which was just 10 miles down the road, and we would go to movies on occasion.
What were the laws and the police like growing up, and how are they different now?
I think that, and that, you know, that's an interesting question. I think number one, the police was more well respected. We didn't have that many around. We had a sheriff, we lived in Jasper County, the sheriff of Jasper County, and he had several deputies, you know, that would drive around the county, but we didn't have a lot of presence. But it was so funny. We were a dry county. You could not buy liquor in Jasper County. Now, in the county down the road, Jones County, you could buy beer, you could buy liquor. But everyone in Jasper County knew you better not go to Jones County and buy beer and drive back across the line into Jasper County, because he was going to get you. So,
Okay.
but I think it was more of a respect for the law.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there wasn't as much mischief going on, to be honest, as there is now. You know, guns were used for hunting. That was it. That was what guns were. They were there, but it was just kind of different. But there was a respect, and I think there was also a respect on the law side for the people in the county.
Right. That's good. What are your current religious beliefs, and how do they differ from those of your household growing up?
This is an interesting one. I've really thought about this seriously. When I was growing, I've had a problem with religion my whole life. My grandmother believed in predestination. She believed that when you were born, the Lord knew if you were going to heaven or hell. And it was like, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. That's just the way it is. Which I always found very, very strange. But we did not go to church when I was a kid. My dad had been a member of it was called the Hard Shell Baptist Church. They did not believe in music in the church. And we went to church there on occasion, and the preacher would scare you to death. So my daddy said to me that when he was a child going to that church every Sunday, that he would sit there and think, the day that I grow up, I'm going to grow up one day and I'm never coming back in these doors. He was afraid, he didn't like it. Now, so we didn't go to church. Later on, Mother decided this is not right. So we started going to the Methodist Church. I am a member of the Methodist Church. I was president of the Methodist Youth Fellowship. So we went to church, but I just never felt like my family really got it, if that makes sense.
It does.
You know? And so, yeah, so I still, you know, I don't know, I wonder sometimes.
Okay. What was religious tolerance like in communities?
There was no problem at all. It was interesting. You know, we had the Baptist church, the Methodist church, everyone got along. We had dinners and things like that together. The only thing that was quite different was those Catholics.
Oh.
And we did not have a Catholic church in our county, but in the next county down, in Laurel, in the city, there was a Catholic church. And everybody really wondered about what went on in the church, you know? And it was so interesting to me is when my mother, because Tom was going to be a Catholic priest. He was a Catholic his whole younger life, and he was in the seminary to be a priest. And my mom knew that. So anytime we went to visit Mother, she would get him in the corner and she wanted him to tell her about those Catholics.
It's really cool.
So actually, all in all, it was just a nice, you know, thing for everybody.
Okay.
Everybody got along.
How many kids do you have, and what is like the typical number per household?
Right. I have 2 kids. I had a third. In between, Melanie is my daughter, and Yancey is 8 years younger than her. I had a daughter in between, Jennifer, and she, hydrocephalic was a thing. She only lived for 3 days. So I did have 3. I have to tell you a sweet thing there. My mother was a nurse at that point. My mom worked in a factory her whole life. She did not graduate from high school. When I was 19 years old, she went and got her GED, and she went to nursing school, and she was an LPN. So when Jennifer was in the nursery, 3 days, and she couldn't breathe, it was just not a good situation. And my mom was in there. This is sad. She knew she was dying, and she picked her up and she held her while she died. So that meant a lot. But I have 2 kids, and I have. Did you ask me about grandchildren now?
That's nice. So
That's okay. I have 5 grandchildren.
Okay. What is your current relationship with your kids and your grandchildren?
Actually, I think it's very good. Very, very good. They, you know, I have to make them behave. You know how that works. But it's interesting because my daughter is so much like her father. My son, Yancey, is very much like my dad and me. So it's almost like 2 sides of the family, but we kid about that. But we talk. Everything's good.
Okay.
It's just a close family.
Were vacations common growing up, and what did it consist of?
Vacations were not common. I always wanted to go to the Smoky Mountains, but we didn't do that. What we did do was, my dad was a fisherman, so I went fishing with him all the time. His sister lived on the coast, the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We would go to her house on occasion and spend a couple of days, and we would all go fishing. The other fun thing that we did, we had a boat. We loved to water ski. So on Sunday afternoon after church, we always went to the lake and we would water ski all afternoon. So it was kind of that kind of, you know, getaway and fun things instead of going away on vacation.
Okay. Have you ever been out of the country, and what was it for?
Yes, I have been out of the country. I actually lived in London for 5 years. The job that I got involved in had to do with computers. I implemented computers in hospitals. It's interesting because my first job at my hospital, a little hospital in Bay Springs, Mississippi, got me into hospitals. And almost the answer to your previous question, that entryway into hospitals has held through. I've worked in varying jobs in hospitals my whole life. So I had implemented lots of computer systems. I had worked for vendors who sold computer systems. I was working for a consulting company, and they wanted to open an office in London. So they asked me if I would go over, and
Nice.
I did. I have implemented in Germany, in Italy, Ireland. I got to see so many different countries and places. And one of the things there that I absolutely loved, and I think about this so much, and it's almost back to the culture thing. People in all of those countries were so nice to me. And in many of the countries, I would fly in and I did not speak the language. And people there would help me. And I never felt like I was in danger, or there was always someone there. And it was a great experience. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay. What were the most common jobs for men and women at the time?
Mainly, men did trade jobs like bricklaying, as my father did, carpentry, those kinds of things. That was the common thing. A few men worked in an office, like maybe in a bank or something like that, but mainly it was the tradesman kind of thing. And women, typically, if they were not, stay-at-home moms, teachers and nurses. Those were the two, professions that most women gravitated toward.
Okay. What is the biggest life lesson you have learned?
Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I think, to me, it is, number one, do the right thing, whatever you think the right thing may be at the moment. Treat people fairly, and if you treat people fairly, even if you have to discuss something that maybe the two of you don't agree on, if you can sit down and do it, without yelling and throwing things, you can accomplish almost anything you need to accomplish. So that's what I try to do. Talk to people. Really talk to people, and if you're at work, don't have people afraid to approach you, if you're the boss. Listen to them, but do what you say you're going to do. That's really important. Don't say you're going to do something and then forget about it.
It's really good. Okay.
The editing part, right?
Yeah. Okay. What is one thing you want to say to future generations?
Oh boy. It's almost the thing that I think about a lot, because, politically right now we're in a turmoil. Everything's upside down. Nobody trusts the other person. And I think what I want to say is we need to get to a point where we can do exactly what I just said a minute ago. Even if we disagree, let's be able to sit down and talk through things logically without getting upset. Respect the other person's opinion, and learn how to work things out for the best, for the good of the people that's going to be affected by whatever you're trying to work through.
That's good. What do you do in your free time now?
What I do in my free time now, my family laughs at me. I'll say, I'm going to the woods now.
Oh.
I hike, I walk, and I go to the gym. Those are the two. Now, I read, I do some things like that. But given a day like today, I'm walking somewhere. So, and the thing that's done is let me, at 72 years old, be pretty doggone healthy. I have no issues. It's good exercise. So,
Yeah. What is the most challenging thing about growing up?
oh boy. I think it's kind of learning about yourself, learning your place, learning what you really would like to do with your life. Because, and I'll bet you've seen this already, there are so many options out there, and they all sound good.
Yeah.
What would you like to do? And one of the best things I did for a short period of time was teach the students here at Roosevelt, the special needs students. And the thing I would say to them is, don't be afraid to try something, even if you fail. You're not a failure. You tried it.
Right.
And you know that it's not right for you, and you move on to something else. So don't be afraid to fail, but do your best at whatever you do, and I think things will work out.
That's really good. Okay. Describe your favorite memory from your childhood.
Oh boy. There's so many good ones. Let's see. Probably my father was a good man. He was a silly man sometimes. And he would come in after he had been at a hard day's work, and he chewed gum and he smoked Camel cigarettes. He'd walk into the room and he'd stand behind his chair and he'd look around the room, chewing his gum. What y'all doing? What y'all doing? It was just he wanted us to be good. He wanted us to be happy. And it was no matter, the other thing, and it's memories about him.
Right.
I was driving our family car, and I had my driver's license, but I had not had the license for very, very long. And I got my little sister, again, 8 years younger than me, and 8 miles up the road, there was a little town called Bay Springs, and there was a Cool Dip, a little place where you could get hamburgers and ice cream. Well, the cool thing to do was to circle the Cool Dip, drive around the Cool Dip. There's actually a Facebook page today of driving around the Cool Dip.
Okay.
So I said to my sister, let's go to Bay Springs. And she said, we can't do that. Mama said we couldn't do that. I said, come on, she's at work. Nobody will ever know. So we drove to Bay Springs. We made our circle, and we started home. Well, it had been raining a little bit. So I'm on this stretch of straight road, and I'm going to pass this car in front of me. So I passed the car, I hit the gas, and when I did, I swerved, went around, and I went off in the ditch. And it was a fairly high ditch. Didn't hurt the car, but I couldn't get the car out. So of course the local farmer down the road was bringing his tractor. He went and got his tractor to pull me out of the ditch. And I had a crowd of people now because people are driving by, and here I am, and I'm standing there watching. And suddenly I hear my daddy. He couldn't see the cars. What's going on? What's up there? Somebody run off the road? And then he looked up and he saw that it was the car, and he looked at me. I said, I did it. You know what his statement to me was? You better get that car home and get it washed before your mama gets home.
That's good.
So that's
That's good.
He let me get away with a few things.
Okay. Who was your biggest inspiration or role model growing up?
My father. He absolutely was. He did the right thing. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. He loved animals. He would not eat his lunch at work, and he'd feed whatever little animal was around there, and he was just a good man. And a lot of people respected him, and I just thought that was the best thing ever.
What is the most rewarding part of adulthood?
Oh boy. I think it's seeing your family grow and do things. Seeing Anna, my granddaughter, go to Barry and do well there. Just, seeing your people do well, do the right thing, have their own families. I think it's that. It's just seeing the things that you started out with, those little tiny babies, grow up and do a good job. I think that's probably it.
Okay. What is your biggest regret?
My biggest regret is not going to college.
Oh.
I was valedictorian in my class. I had a scholarship when I graduated. I decided that I needed to get married. And I broke my mother's heart. I really broke my mother's heart. My scholarship came from a little company that she worked for, and she had to actually return it because I didn't use it. I could just shoot myself today for doing that to her. But what I did, I had my 2 kids and realized I really wish I had done college. So I started doing night classes. And I graduated from college at Columbus State the year that my daughter graduated from high school. So I did, but every time I go visit my granddaughter at Barry, I say to her, kidding kind of, I'm really jealous. This is what I wanted to do, and I didn't do it. So that's my biggest one.
Okay, and last question. What
Okay.
do you want everyone you have ever met to remember most about you?
Oh boy. I think it's that I really, my family at times tells me that I don't like people, you know, and because I don't talk a lot. I don't, you know, I don't know how to even explain that. But I kind of have a reputation for being nice to people and listening to people and trying to help them do the right thing. One of the things, my current role is CEO of the hospital in town, and I love to talk to the employees there and tell them that you can talk to me. I'm not going to basically go run and tell anybody, oh boy, they said this. But if you'll talk to me and trust me enough to let me help, that's what I'd like to do. And they're kind of, you know, I had to prove that though. I had to prove that I would do what I said I was going to do.
Right.
And that, I think, to me means the world. Really means the world.
That's good. So, okay. That's all that we have. That's all the questions we have. And thanks.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate that.